The next three speakers are going to be Nikes Ndembi and Waida, who will speak to the relevance of this platform to their work. And then finally, we will have Paxton Murila, the CTC product specialist, who will summarize the key features that are already on the platform and some features that we will be building onto the platform in phase 2. Over to you, Nikes.
Great, thanks, Jennifer. I'm Nikes Ndembi, Africa CDC Chief Science Advisor. So I'm happy to be here with colleagues which are actually strategic partners from the African Academy of Sciences. And we are collaborating on the CONVACT, which is one of the pillars of the Africa Union, Africa CDC vaccine strategy. So just quickly, I'm just going to take you through the three pillars. The first pillar is actually on accelerating Africa involvement in clinical trial development. So we launched the consortium for COVID-19 vaccine clinical trials in July, and really that has been so far a success. And then the second pillar is around access, financing, and procurement, and then on the need also manufacturing, which actually aimed at scaling up African vaccine manufacturing capacity. And the last pillar, it's on around uptake, engaging communities to maximize vaccine acceptance and uptake, and then also regulatory under that same pillar to enable actual regulatory decisions on ongoing safety monitoring for clinical trials being conducted on the continent. And lastly, delivery. So during that process, we very early on, we've engaged the African Academy of Science, and that was actually hosting that the clinical trial community project that aims actually to showcase clinical trial sites and their capabilities. So we were able to map out over 200 clinical trial sites, and based on their input and the use of the clinical trial, particularly really the data around disease burden that we did actually see on the video, and also mapping regulatory and ethics committee processes in respective country has been very useful. It's a really one-stop shop that provides enough information at site to be able to conduct clinical trials and avoid duplication. That's very important as well. So the team really have produced and displayed what you've seen, and then this clinical trial platform has been showcased at one of the head of state high strategic meeting recently, and was actually given a really high kind of commendment from Africa CDC. So thanks so much for listening, and over to you, Jen. Bye.
Thank you so much, Nikes. And then I will let Waida take it over from there. She'll speak to how she sees the platform helping her in her work as she's based on the African continent. Over to you, Waida.
Thank you, Jen. And hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. So my perspective, I work for Roche as a sponsor company, and the perspective of the challenges in finding sites and the lack of information and predictability in the regulatory process. So a lot of what I'm going to touch on has already been spoken towards in the video and the previous speaker, but just to encapsulate the sponsor perspective, one of the biggest challenges in designing and executing, especially global trials, is having that sense of predictability and being able to capture the risk value ahead of time so as to put in plans for risk minimization. And Africa has, for the longest time, been viewed, I would say, from a sponsor perspective, as not having enough clarity as to the regulatory and ethics committee processes. A system, as somebody once told me, of moving goalposts. So you can't really predict, you can't really plan for risk minimization if things are forever changing or there's not enough clarity as to what the process is. Definitely one of the biggest and the topmost advantage for sponsor companies when it comes to the CTC platform will be this information, the regulatory and ethics committee information, which will provide clarity and give visibility about the research landscape, processes, contact information, and create that sense of predictability that is required to plan for global clinical trials. The second perspective is having the site information. That will be really critical. I really see it as being a living, breathing CV for the site. A lot of work goes into site feasibility. Those colleagues who are here from sites who know that with every project they have to fill in probably a very similar form on site feasibility. Having that information already on the platform will cut down that work. It will make it easier for sponsors to go, not have to repeat information, duplication of effort. I've heard that mentioned already several times in the last few minutes. So that information will be there. It will now require to push the conversation to probably specific therapeutic area needs, as opposed to general site information. We see that as a big advantage to create that visibility for sites. The third aspect, and which is terribly exciting for us from a sponsor side, is the epidemiological heat map that's there, which will outline where the prevalence of different diseases will be on the continent. For the longest time, I think the perspective has always been, and the research has always focused on infectious diseases primarily, but we have a whole host of other health challenges on the continent that also need to be addressed. We have the opportunity to also innovate. From a sponsor side, knowing where to pick sites and where the patients are will be really critical in, again, reducing that risk and creating that predictability and that visibility. One of the biggest challenges for research projects is recruitment challenges. That's world over. So being able to choose the right site where the patient is really critical. And I really love the heat map process in just letting us know where the patient is, and so hence choosing where the sites need to be. And again, the fourth advantage that I see is knowing who is doing what, which will create avenues for collaboration. And as I also mentioned, avoid duplication of effort. If somebody's already doing it, we don't need to be doing it. We could open up conversation to collaborate or already learn, and again, further the agenda, push the boundaries to what is next. And so the final point that I have is also, as a sponsor company, this will be an opportunity for us to inform the community, the trialists, colleagues from sites, regulators, ethics committee, as to what we as sponsors are also doing, whether it's our activities and our studies, but also training opportunities and opportunities for collaboration that we may be looking for. So really, in all, I see the CTC platform as an opportunity for creating a true synergistic coming together of everybody on the continent, which will create a ripple effect and hopefully a tsunami wave of a solid structure that will create the credibility of quality and reliability of African trial sites. And with that, I just would like to close to say that I would like to then invite the sites, the regulators, the ethics committee members to not only participate in the online platform, but also take that personal responsibility of ensuring that the information is current, always up to date, and clear. And there are contact people who can be reached out to in case of further clarification that is needed for planning purposes. And for the developers, it is also, we've had certain discussions about this. There's going to be a lot of data that is going to be available. So the idea of having like a data dashboard, but from pulling different elements so that we can run reports, for example, who's the top site in recruiting for a certain therapeutic area. This will be terribly exciting and really will move the needle when it comes to further investment in clinical trials in Africa. So thank you so much for the time. Back to you, Jen.
Thank you so much, Waida. Excellent comment there, and hopefully people can be able to go online already and access the CTC platform. It's already live. So next, you're going to hear very briefly some of the features that are already on the platform before we move to the breakout sessions to get a detailed experience of the same. A lot of them have been referenced by our previous speakers, but very quickly, Caxton will take us through that. Over to you, Caxton.
Thank you very much, Jen, and thank you very much, Uweda and Case, who have briefly touched on the features I really wanted to talk about. But briefly, I'll be taking you through the progress of the platform in terms of the technical build. Initially, what we wanted to do was build a community, and you can see from the first icon, profiling stakeholders was what we started with, and this feature is already on the platform. So what you can access at the moment is researchers' information who have profiled themselves on the platform, centers and sites who have uploaded the information as well, regulatory stakeholders who have profiled themselves on the platform as well. And we also have facilitation for sponsors and funders to upload the information. And last but not least, the community members who can interact with different aspects of the platform. Just to highlight, the trial sites profiling themselves based on the Transalary form that captures comprehensive data about the capacity and capabilities based on what they have on the site. The second feature we've achieved on this platform is searching on the platform. And this is both a combination of advanced searching tool and also predefined reports. And what you can achieve through the search aspect of this platform is you can get COVID-19 site report for capabilities and capacities for those who have already conducted COVID-19 studies. Also, you can access national regulatory agencies' data. And with this, you can be able to compare regulatory agencies in terms of the cost and the timeline it takes to conduct or get approval for these clinical trial studies within different countries in Africa. This is an exciting feature that we received a lot of feedback on in terms of use, and we're looking at how it can be used moving forward. A final feature that we on this that was implemented just a few days ago was searching for researchers, and this will be able to give users a chance to search for researchers they're interested in and how they can interact together within the platform. The interactive map is one of our golden features in this platform, and a user can search for specific sites, as Uweda mentioned, overlay disease burden data as well, based on prevalence on the specific countries. And you can zoom in and see further details such as contact details and the capacities and capabilities based on the Transalary form. And this can be used for decision making at any level based on the kind of user you are on the platform. Last but not least, integration with third-party platform. This is something that was asked so many times by so many partners in terms of we should not reinvent the wheel, but basically ensure that we link to existing platform. So some of the platforms that we've achieved in terms of linkages, such as the Institute of Health Metrics, Pan-African Clinical Trial Registry, as well as clinicaltrials.gov that have been giving us information that is already on the platform. Moving forward, some of the features that we want to implement on the platform is online submission and review of protocol within the platform. And this is linked to increasing the timeline it takes to review these protocols. And one of the features that we receive a lot of feedback in terms of a need within the African continent. The second one is how do we link existing modules and training modules that exist within other platforms as well. And we've been in conversation with the Global Health Network, who have a comprehensive link of e-learning platform, and we have as well in conversation with other partners to see how we can link the training module for users who come to this platform. Linking researchers to the WHO TDR competency framework is also another aspect that we're looking at. And this will provide a chance to users or researchers to link themselves in terms of the role they play at the clinical trial study. And this will eventually give us capacity and capacity gaps that exist within a clinical trial site. Social media and collaboration tools, this is something we also want to build up on in the next phase. And this is also linked to how we can improve on collaboration such as forums, linking, liking content, sharing content within the platform so that it can inculcate sharing aspects of the platform in terms of content as well as best practices that researchers at other clinical trial sites are having. The two features that you see marked in red are the ones that we are really looking forward to getting your feedback today. And the first one is additional search and report features that we'll be seeing how they work within the platform, and also the digital search feasibility. And once we get to the breakout session, we'll be able to give us feedback on these And we're really looking forward to your feedback and seeing how we can improve the platform to capture these two specific features. I don't want to take much time, but looking forward to your feedback during the breakout session once we break out to the next session. Thank you, Jen, and I'll be back to you.
Thank you so much, Caxton. Very well summarized. So now, without wasting any more time, we will go into our breakout sessions. So there are two breakout sessions again, A and B. Please indicate in the chat function which of the two you want to go to. So in A, we will be focusing on features that are related to researchers and regulatory and ethics issues. And in B, we will be focusing on issues related to sponsors and funders. Then after 30 minutes, we will see you back here in the main room so that we can conclude.
Research professional, whether you represent an IRB, a national regulator, a sponsor company, you will be able to profile yourself, quickly build your CV in a similar way that it works on LinkedIn. You can say what type of research you do. If you have any publications, you can pull them in here. Then on the left-hand side, so here's where we have a couple of things that we are profiling at the moment. The thing that I'm going to show you in the other room, we are going to focus more on the sponsors, the CROs, and how they access and use the platform's data from a different perspective. But you being either researchers or representing ethics, research ethics committees or regulators, I'm going to show you this from this section. So first of all, if your own profile, you will then be able to associate yourself with either one or more research centers. If you do research in a number of different practices, or you have one specific research center, so you'll click here on the left-hand side onto Center and Sites. And under the third tab, which is Other Centers or Sites, you'll see all the sites that we have available. So you'll see here that we just have over 1,800 sites. And there's many of them. You can search for them in the search bar. And just to give you an idea of how we profile these sites, I'm going to click on that one quickly. You'll see here we have a whole bunch of details. We have contact details. With some of them, we are constantly enriching this data. We have GPS coordinates for almost 50% of the sites. And then we did follow the Transcelerate template when we profile these sites. So when we profile these sites, you'll see that there's a lot of information here of the different types of research they do, the kinds of labs they have, from a consent perspective, what processes they follow, whether it's paper or electronic consent. And this way, we allow the researchers and the research sites to really build a complete profile, because I'm going to show you now how the public will actually search for you once you've completed your profile. So you as a researcher, once you get to this stage where you see all these centers, and you see them in these tabs that I just showed you, you can click on the icons here. On the right-hand side, there's a little tick icon and also a little blue man icon. So with the tick, you can associate yourself with a specific site, research center, so that people know you do work there. Or you can become a moderator on that site or an administrator. So that means that you will have privileges to update information. In a very similar way, we have profiled the national regulators and also the research ethics committees. So at the moment, we've profiled just like 36 national regulators so far. With some of them, obviously, we have more information than with others. But also here, we follow a very similar kind of process of how we profile them. So if I just want to show you how this interactive search works, it works the same way across the platform. So if I go into SAPRA as an example, here in South Africa, we profile them in a very similar way. We've had a couple of engagements with these national regulators where we gather some information, whether they use electronic or paper submissions, what their timelines look like, and we can also use this a little bit later on to compare different regulators with each other. Just quickly around research ethics committees, very similar way again. We have profiled just under 150 research ethics committees so far, and in here, very similar. We have a lot of data of these research ethics committees, and with some of them, we even have a complete catalog of how much they charge for each of the different application types, and also how long it takes for them to review it. So now I'm going to take you back to the public portal. I'm just quickly going to show you two things here. So the first one is the regulatory and ethics map. So from here, you'll see there's a bit of an interactive map, and all the data we populated in the back end is now represented in a graphical way here. So if an example, if I click on Kenya, it will open up all the information that we have from Kenya's national regulator. And then also the ethics committees linked to Kenya. All of them will be here. And if you expand on any of these, you'll see all the data that we have currently for that specific ethics committee. The one thing that Caxton did mention is the regulator comparison tools. As an example, say you are considering doing a study either maybe in Kenya or in Ghana as an example, and maybe South Africa, then you can actually compare those different regulators with each other. We'll display them in a table format, and you can quickly compare them. You can see how often they meet, what they charge, and what kind of technologies they use to accept new applications. So I'm going to now navigate back to our main feature, which is our interactive map, which looks a little bit different. So on here, there's lots of things we can do. So one of the third-party integration partners we do make use of is IHME. So here we have extensive disease burden data, like many of the speakers have spoken about. So this is the interactive map, and you'll see here as I zoom in and out the sites and how it works on the map is very, very interactive. You can very easily see where the different sites are and how many of them are per country. Then on the left-hand side here, you can see there's a couple of filters. So the first one, you can filter for research sites doing specific types of trials. And then we also have the filter for the disease burden data, and this is data from 2017. So just using a real-life example, say, we are interested in maybe looking at an oncology study, and we want to look at specifically lung cancer. We can filter for that. Then if I zoom out a little bit so that you can just see it then full screen. So now if I filter maybe on the sex of this patient, and I say female, you'll see it changing slightly. Then if I filter on the age group, I go to children, you'll see obviously the prevalence is very, very low, but if I go to the older ages, it's very, very high. So now I have an idea of what's happening of this specific disease. Now I want to see which sites are actually doing work on oncology. So I'm going to say, show me some sites that are doing maybe interventional studies. Let's look at sites doing phase 2 work. And then maybe for a condition, let's look at oncology as an example. So in here, you will see that the filtering has now filtered out a lot of the sites. And then there's a couple of them in South Africa. There's some work in Nigeria, in Egypt, and in Algeria. So now as an example, if I click on this specific site there in Algeria, if I zoom all the way in, you'll see we actually have the street address of all these sites. Then if I click on this specific site, you'll see that this site has been profiled, and the contact number and the email address we don't have yet, but this will allow you to actually make contact with them. And then we will have an interactive sort of a representation of the people who are either the administrators here, who are contributors to the sites, and also the different researchers who have affiliated themselves with this research center. Then the second tab here is the studies. So here you can see all the different studies that this site is actually doing. And here you can see we are pulling the data in directly here from clinicaltrials.gov. So if you want to go to the source of the data, all of these are hyperlinked. You can click on them and it will take you directly to the source of the data. So that is just sort of the tip of the iceberg. There's lots of other things on the platform itself, but I'm going to open it up to the floor, hand it back to Jen, and see if there are any specific questions or anything specifically you would like to see. And then we'll dive into that, and I'll try my best to show you how the platform can assist you with any of those specific needs. Thanks, Jen.
So thank you so much, Adrian, for that quick high-level summary of the features. I just want to encourage our attendees to put any questions that they might have in the chat box so that we can read them out and try to answer them. So far, I haven't seen any questions. So let's see. Yeah, so far there are no questions, but as people think about any questions or anything like or any comments, I just want to pose a question to you, Adrian. I know we've talked about providing a platform where people can actually have interactions and discussions. Do you want to touch on that briefly as we wait for our attendees to put questions out, and just give us the couple of different ways you're thinking about presenting this so that we can have comments from the audience?
Yes, thank you, Jane. I'm quickly just going to log out of my profile. I'm just going to log in with our administrative account, because we have a couple of things that we want to show you, and we actually want to put it to the audience today. So you'll see here, I've now logged in as an administrator. So you're on the left-hand side, I have a whole bunch of other things. So we have a couple of tools of how we keep the data in sync, and we protect the data. We have worked very, very hard to build a sort of a golden standard of data. But specifically towards your point, Jen, so we have two different ways of how we want to encourage the members of the platform to engage with each other. So the one is by means of an interactive forum. So as an example, it will sort of look like this. Here on the left-hand side, there will be a number of different categories. You'll see it will be broken up based on the main categories or the organizations we profile on the platform. And then from here, you can go into specific research topics. And in here, there can be a discussion. So obviously, this is a dummy discussion that I just started about e-source and what other people think. And then based on this, there can be back and forwards discussion. So it's a more of like a discussion panel. The other way of how we thought of doing it is is the typical social media feed. So very similar to that, how you would experience LinkedIn or Facebook. So different people can post things on a timeline like this. Based on that, you can either share it to your personal network on LinkedIn or your professional network maybe. And you can also make a comment to have back and forwards discussions. And from here, you can also start following specific individuals that you would like to know more of if they maybe publish something regarding a research paper. So maybe a question to the audience is whether you would prefer the news feed or the forum style of interacting with your colleagues on the platform.
Yeah, so thank you, Adrian. As they post that, we can start tackling some of the questions that have come through now. So the first question is by GetNet. Hi, GetNet, nice that you're here with us today. So he asks the question, what motivates IRBs or regulators to register on the platform? It is clear how it helps researchers and institutions, but not as clear for the IRB and regulators. So that's a great question, GetNet. The goal of the platform really is to have a coordinated and comprehensive way of us moving the continent forward in terms of clinical trials. And we know that some of the biggest challenges have been with regard to the processes within regulatory and IRB sections. And so what will motivate them is because it's all for public good. We want to make sure that this can happen, and it can happen within predictable times, like Huwaida said. And by registering and providing the information on the platform, it just makes it easy for people to make the decisions. And that's how together we'll be able to increase the level of investments that we are hoping to increase from that 2% to a much bigger number. So I hope that answers your questions, but we would also love to hear your comments with regard to that. The second question is from Pumla. Nice to have you here, Pumla. She says, hi, Adrian, impressive work. Do you wait for sites to register, or do you approach sites that are known, or a combination of both? So I can take that, and then Adrian can add to it in case he has more, which is the fact that so far we've actually used multiple different ways of getting to where we are today. As you know, today is kind of like our big launch, but we are gonna be doing a lot more things going forward. So far what we've done is that we've collected a lot of data from either from existing platforms, from PubMed, institutions that have conducted a trial at one time or the other. So what we plan to do after this is, once we clean that data that we have on the platform that has come from clinicaltrials.gov or PACTA or other institutions, we will get in touch with these sites and let them know that we actually have their information and we would like them to own the site and start updating the sites going forward. Some of the people that have been able to provide us with names of these sites are PDPs and CROs that work on the African continent that we are working very closely with. So we've really involved a number of key stakeholders in collecting all these sites that we have on the platform now. And then moving forward, it remains that for us to email them and call them and tell them to own the sites and continue updating the data going forward. And then we have another question from Evelyn. I work in a university which has an Institute of Health Research and Research Ethics Committee. Can this Research Ethics Committee register? Absolutely. GetNet says, who do you think will be the best person to complete the platform? administrator, or PIs? That's a great question. So as I've explained earlier, we already have some information from most of the sites, but it's incomplete, as you've seen from the presentation. So what we plan to do is to get in touch with whichever name or contact person that we have currently, and then try to create a relationship. If it's a PI's name that we have, we'll ask them whether they have an administrator or a coordinator or a clinical trial manager, and then we will make that person own the site, and so that they can be able then to update the information on the site going forward. Besides that, I would also actually just want to very quickly let Adrian show you and also comment to the fact that once the administrator or site manager owns the site, there are many things that we'd expect this person to do. For example, if I as a researcher want to associate myself with a site in Kenya, the administrator has to actually approve of that, so that the data that we have is accurate. Over to you, Adrian.
Yes, thanks, Jen. So sorry, as Jen is speaking, I'm trying to show you stuff here in the background. So just quickly on the previous or two questions back is, I think the majority of the data that we got, we actually reverse engineered the data that we're getting from the clinical trials registry. So obviously on clinicaltrials.gov, PACTER, UKCDR, all of those registries, you have to load the research site or the research sites that you planning on using in the research project. So we use those details to just get a database in the beginning. And then obviously we've had excellent partners. CEPI have provided us with an excellent database of very complete data of research sites. And so like Jen mentioned, so we have a lot of research sites, but some of them don't have complete data at the moment. So as an administrator, so you can see this is the live platform. So you can see when last these sites were updated with any new data. There's already a couple of people here who've claimed these sites. So they've sent a request to the African Academy of Sciences team to say they would like to become the administrator of this site. So once you are an administrator, some of the things that you can do and will have to do is, first of all, if anyone wants to become a moderator on your site, you'll have to approve them, just to make sure that it's not everyone in the world that's updating your clinical research practices data. And the same sort of methodology works for research ethics committees and for the IRBs and for the sponsors and CROs. Something else that I wanted to quickly mention is also from a profile perspective. So say you profile yourself, and why should you create a complete profile? Because there's a profile search function here. So they can maybe say, okay, cool, show me everyone who's doing any oncology work. And then from here, they can choose a specific person. And based on that, they can actually see, oh, this is this person, this is the education, and they actually can reach out to this person. So we do have a couple of ways at the end of the day, how we are displaying the data to the front end.
Yeah, so thanks, Adrian. Let's see what else we have here. Betsy says, this looks very exciting. How are you publicizing this new platform with sites? So we've had a number of webinars in the past. Today is our, soft launch, and so there will be a lot of buzz around this. Please tweet us. We are at Africa CTC is our Twitter handle. You can let people know that it's gone live, www.ctc.africa. But over and above that, we will continue to get in touch with people. As I mentioned, whenever we have a contact, we will try to reach out to those people. And when we don't have a contact, we've actually put together a data assistance team at the African Academy of Sciences that basically will be linking to these sites. And that is, we can try to Google and find any information that we can to allow us to actually get in touch with these sites. But over and above that, really, we are depending on people like yourselves, these attendees at the Grand Challenges meeting today, please tell your colleagues about the platform, and so that the word can spread around the continent, so that we can meet our objectives together. Thank you so much, Betty, for that question. The next question, I'm not a trialist, ethicist, or regulator. I'm an editor of Nature Medicine. I'm super excited to see this platform being developed and implemented. We are often have to turn down otherwise good trials for the region due to procedural issues such as retrospective or no registration at all, or poor statistical planning and protocol development. I wonder if you provide any support via the platform to investigators to basic trial setup with regard to these procedural matters. So that's a really great question. And it's one of the areas that we are looking into moving into in the next phase. Adrian, I don't know whether you want to comment on this, but some of the areas that the things that we want to do next is to link the researchers to the WHO TDR competency framework so that we know which sites have what capabilities and capacities, and then we can be able to identify what the gaps are. And then once we identify what the gaps are, we can have conversations with our sponsors to determine whether there are possibilities in which we can have training and anything that with that regard to fill the gaps, because we do recognize that we've had a lot of requests around people wanting a lot of training. What we are not entirely sure at the moment is what are the specific areas where these gaps are. And so once we identify those, we'll have conversations with our sponsors and partners to see how we can work together to fill those out. So if if you have ideas, Jennifer, you can also talk to me and we can see how we can work together. GetNet again says some PIs in Africa may have multiple sites depending on the need, mainly on the basis of affiliation, and if it may not be the institution that they're currently working on. What is your advice on that? So GetNet, for that, people are allowed to be affiliated to multiple sites. Adrian, do you want to comment on that?
Yes, thanks, Jane. Good question. So just going to quickly log in with my own profile again. Absolutely. So we have, there's many instances where researchers are affiliated with a number of different sites. And on our platform, you can actually, as a researcher, associate yourself with a number of different research sites. And then when someone does reach that site, they will see that you are affiliated with them. Just to quickly show you how that works. I'm now on the live platform and I see here a site here in Gambia. I would like to affiliate myself with that site. Just want to show you before I do that, the moment I've affiliated myself with 3 sites. So if I go to this site here in Gambia and I want to affiliate myself with that site, it's literally one click. It will reload the screen. And then from there, you'll get a notice here on the top right-hand side to say that you have now been affiliated. And here in the center screen, you will see that this is now part of your affiliation. So on the interactive map, if you now go to any of these research sites, you will see my profile picture there. And then from there, we will add a hyperlink where you can actually reach my profile. So we're trying to interconnect all the different bits and pieces of data that we have. One quick thing, Jen, before I hand back to you, is something that Caxton mentioned is about some new features that we are going to work on in the future. Just to go back to the interactive platform, once again, I'll maybe use a real-time example because I think this is quite important for researchers and also for sponsors and why you should profile yourself. To say someone is looking for someone who's doing malaria work and they filter here for malaria, any kind of research, you can see there's a whole bunch of sites here. So someone looking for a research site that actually has experience with malaria work can click here. And the idea is here to actually have a button here to say send digital feasibility request. And it will be based on specific questions that you choose as a sponsor or a CRO company. And then you as the site representative will actually get a notification on the platform to say someone sent you a digital feasibility request and you can quickly fill it in. And then the CRO, the sponsor company, will once again receive that feedback. So that's sort of where we're going to just link all these different pieces of data together. Back to you, Jane.
Yeah, thanks, Adrian. I know we are just about to come to the end of this breakout session room time, sorry, because we probably have like a couple minutes. Let's see if we have any other question that we can quickly get to. Do you have plans to track implementation and creating case studies to demonstrate the value of your platform brings across all of the users? Yes, that is something that we are thinking about. Actually, that's one of the reasons we invited Nikes to speak to the attendees today, because he has actually been able to make use of it for his work. And so we would love to hear stories about how people are using the platform and if it's making their work easy. And I guess really an important thing to mention is that we are using the agile methodology, and so we are able to keep changing the platform to suit your needs. So please continue speaking to us and telling us what you think needs to change, and Adrian will be very happy to think about how we can modify the platform to suit your needs. Adrian, maybe you should give your final comments just before we find ourselves out of this room.
Yeah, no, thank you, Jen, and thanks to everyone for joining the session today. I think one thing that Nikes said is really, we want to showcase the clinical trial and research capability that we have on the continent. We are all passionate about this continent and passionate about clinical research, and we want this to become like a one-stop shop. And the only way for us to get there is to encourage everyone to participate in populating this platform with as much data, accurate data, and as up-to-date data as possible. So we encourage you to help share the good message and encourage your colleagues and your professional network to register themselves on the platform. And yeah, we'll keep you posted on all the new things we're planning in the year ahead. Thank you.
And another thing, just very quickly, for those who are asking about how we're engaging with sites and everyone, I mentioned we've been doing webinars, but that's in part because of COVID-19 and we couldn't travel. Otherwise, our plan was to go, through the 5 regions of the continent and have face-to-face meetings and interact face-to-face, and have this kind of conversation we are having in a face-to-face environment. And so we don't know whether that's going to be possible in 2021, but if it is, then you'll be hearing from us and we'll be able to, meet and just revise what's on the platform and how useful it is, and then determine whether we need to make changes going forward.
Morning, good day, wherever in the world you are. Welcome to this breakout session. My name is Colin Pillay. I'm a clinical pharmacologist and an advisor to the African Academy of Sciences on this wonderful project. In this session now, as Jen indicated, we're going to spend around 30 minutes together. In the first part, for about 10 minutes or so, Cornelia van Graan will take us through a demo of the platform. And our goal primarily in this session is to get your feedback. So we're going to reserve as much time as possible for you to give us feedback. Please go wild already and type in stuff on the chat. There are 3 of us as facilitators here. I hope Caxton is with me already. Caxton, who you just heard a few minutes ago. And with that, let me hand over to Cornelia.
Thank you so much, Colin. Hello, everybody. Firstly, I would just like to know, can everybody see my screen? Or Colin, can you just confirm that you can see my screen?
Absolutely, and we can hear you brilliantly.
Thank you so much. As mentioned earlier, kindly navigate to the platform, so ctc.africa, and you can navigate around the platform as I demo, but kindly also register yourself, or if you have registered yourself, kindly access the platform and navigate with us as I demo. So firstly, one big thing about this whole platform is that the researchers community, and that we rely heavily on third-party communities to actually provide us with a lot of the information that we do display on the platform. And I would just like to thank them firstly. I'm going to start off with the COVID-19 section, just because we started off this project completely focusing on something very different, and then the whole COVID-19 situation happened, and I just quickly want to make mention of it. So if you navigate to the COVID-19 section on the platform, you will see that it opens up a section that it opens up a section specifically with showing the disease burden in Africa, as well as clinical trials that are currently happening in Africa focusing on COVID-19. And if you navigate back to the drop down and you go to the next section, you will see that there is specific information with regards to the regulatory information when focusing on COVID-19 research. From here on, I will jump into the actual part of the demo where I will log in to the back end of the platform. And this is a very important part where we encourage everybody to actually register themselves to navigate to the extra information. So as you can see, when I log in, I have a platform with some basic information where I have been registered as a researcher, where I can indicate that I am a COVID-19 researcher. And this is a very important aspect of the platform where people like yourselves, sponsors, CROs, and PDPs can actually get information on researchers who do identify themselves as COVID-19 researchers. Some basic information of a researcher, sponsor, or CRO can then be captured, but we also make use of a wide variety where the actual sites can capture information with regards to themselves, where you can navigate to that and get some basic information on them. With regards to sponsors and CROs, the amount of questions that you need to complete is a lot less than when you are registering yourself on the platform as a trial site or a regulator. But this information is just to show what is happening in Africa and where certain sponsors are actually focusing their research. So to complete a sponsor profile, you will just have to complete your name, just some basic information with regards to yourself, your address, and then just your locations in Africa where you are currently doing research or where you are planning on doing research. Okay, I'm just going to navigate here to the side to the profile search. And over here is where it is important that researchers who have already registered themselves on the platform, or people that are still going to register themselves on the platform, mark their information as complete as possible, as well as specifically to the COVID-19 information. So if you do search on the platform, now you will see that we have two personnel that have, since we have updated this feature, you can find them on the system and they will give you a bit of information on how to contact this person and what research they have done thus far. Now I'm going to move over to the interactive map, and as Caxton mentioned, this is our pride on the platform, and we are really proud of this aspect and feature of our platform. As you can see, when you navigate to this section of the platform, you will see that a lot of sites are already visible, and I will take you through all of that now, but I first want to start with the COVID-19 information. So we got sites that were identified as possible COVID-19 sites, as well as sites that are already currently doing COVID-19 research, and we do also display some disease burden information with regards to the COVID-19. So if you just click on the drop-down list, you will see, if you switch between the information, you will see that with regards to the legend, the map actually do update, and you can then get the information with regards to COVID-19 disease burden data. Okay. I'm now going to sketch a scenario. We are going to do a malaria study, and we want to know, we want to do a malaria study on children under the age of 5, because it has come to light that children under the age of 5 are the most vulnerable group, and that more than 67% of that group who actually contract malaria do in the end die. So we want to see malaria We want to see disease burden data on malaria, and we want to do a phase 2 interventional study with regards to malaria. So first I'm going to navigate to my side filter. I am going to select, we want to do interventional studies. And as I select it, you will see on our map that our number of sites decrease as we filter to a more granular aspect. Okay, so now on our map, we do have sites who are conducting interventional phase 2 studies on malaria. But now we just want to make sure that the sites that we do select are actually in a malaria area. And we want to make sure that our information focuses on children under the age of 5. So as you can see, our map has now informed us that there is a big part in the middle of Africa who is more prone to malaria, and there are quite a large number of sites in that specific area. So I'm just going to scroll in a bit so that you can see nicely. So as I scroll in, you will see that it navigates more specifically to the GPS location. When you hover over one of the markers, you will see that the actual site name displays. And when you click on the site, it will give you the information of that site, as well as who is the site owner, as well as if a person has contributed to the information of that site, or if they are an affiliate of that specific site. When you click on studies, which is the next tab, you will see all the studies that this specific site is actually conducting. So it is not only now specifically focusing on malaria, but all the studies that have been conducted at this specific site. If you are not sure about which one of these specific sites that you do want to use, we do have a grid table at the bottom of the page that you can open up, and it will give you all the sites that are currently displaying on the map, and this can then be exported into Excel or into PDF. If you want to know with regards to the studies or the trials that these sites have conducted, you can then extract them from the bottom drop down, which is then displaying all the trials that have been conducted at these specific sites. So looking at our map, we can see that we have a focus in Burkina Faso, Nigeria, and Congo. So now we want to select a site, but we are not sure how the regulatory aspects of these countries will affect our study. So now we will navigate to one of the other features on the platform, which is our regulatory comparative tool. So you will navigate to the regulatory comparative tool, and we will search for Nigeria, Congo, as well as Ghana. And we will then compare the three regulatory bodies to one another with the information that we do have on the system. But we have also seen that there are quite a large number of sites in Burkina Faso, so we just want to add that as well to our comparator. So we can just add the name, and then all four will be displayed, and you can also export this into Excel. But now we know about the regulatories, but we are still a bit unsure about the ethics committees. Now you can do this in two ways. Firstly, you can hover over the country or the countries in red. We do have information with regards to the national regulators as well as ethics committees. So if I click on the Democratic Republic of Congo, you will see that it gives me first the information with regards to the national regulators. And if I click on the second tab, it will actually give me the information of 3 different ethics committees. And you can then get the information if you just click on the plus sign with regards to this specific ethics committee. Now, I said in the beginning, there are 2 different ways. So the second one is you can open up the drop down at the bottom, and you can then search on on this view, on this table view, for some information that you want to know. For example, we want to know all the ethics committees where you can actually hand in your application in a paper format. So you can then search via any of the columns and it will filter down the information that you want. And this can also be exported into Excel or into PDF. Lastly, I'm going to navigate back into the back end of the platform, and this is now where we need your help with regards to a new feature that is on the platform, and this is specifically interacting with other organizations. So not specifically sponsors with sponsors, but sponsors with regards to CROs, to researchers, to national regulators. So we have come up with two different plausible options. So the first one is a news feed section that looks very similar to this. So you can follow researchers, you can follow national regulators, and whenever they post something on their newsfeed, you will also be able to see that specific newsfeed, and you can also comment on that newsfeed and as well as share that newsfeed. So this is a much more social media kind of approach to the interaction. Now, the second suggestion is a forum, which is specifically focused to the different organizations that's already captured on the system. And from there, you can then interact with one another, specifically just with all the sponsors will have one group where all the sponsor information is captured, but it will then be open for everybody to see, but not always for everybody to actually comment on. So that was the two options that we do have. From here on, I think, Colin, if you are ready, we can open up the floor for discussion, as well as if anybody has any questions. But Colin, over to you.
Cornelia, that was fantastic. And, you know, I heard that there was a storm coming through Pretoria. So I'm glad that you had really high-speed internet and everything. Brilliant. So I've got an A-team with me, Cornelia and Faith, who are helping to monitor the questions. So the floor is now open. You can pose your questions on the chat feature. And it's not necessarily just questions, but any suggestions, any comments. And so Cornelia has asked you a very specific one to start us off. Would you like to interact with other platform users using the newsfeed option or the organization-based discussion forums? Craig, thanks very much for your question. I'm going to unmute you so you can actually pose the question if you agree.
Can you pause 1 second? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly, Craig.
My name is Craig Penz. I'm from the Gates Medical Research Institute. And I was just curious more about the regulatory information. Who exactly posts it, if they're encouraged to update it at any kind of frequency, and then if there's any kind of vetting or check on the information in case there's conflicting information.
Great stuff. Thanks for getting us started, Craig. So I'm going to start with an answer, and Cornelia, you can feel free to jump in towards the end, and if I miss anything out. So Craig, one of the great things about working with the African Academy of Sciences is that it's a Pan-African organization, and very early on, the AAS arranged a collaboration with AVREF, the African Vaccines Regulatory Forum. This is a WHO Afro group, and by and large, the information comes from this regulatory harmonization group. Now, the information that you see on the platform right now, it's something like 33 to 35 of the regulatory agencies that have been profiled there. That was obtained from a lot of desk research that Cornelia and the Nuvotech team, as well as the AAS team, put together. The arrangement with AVREF is that they will help to update this information. Another source of the information was the NIH's ClinRegs database. So in terms of going forward, in terms of updating that, one is it'll come directly from the agencies. And then what we're hoping is that this community would start to provide information about whether the agreed timelines, etc., are being kept in the way in which they should be kept. So I stop, check if Cornelia wants to add anything, and then see if there's any other questions. Thanks, Greg.
Thank you.
I have nothing to add. Thanks, Colin.
Cool stuff. In this room, we're really blessed to have both Huwaida and Nick Hayes, our two brief speakers. So if anybody has a question to them, you're welcome to ask that as well. Sorry to put you on the spot, guys. So I want to change the question then and pick up on something that actually Huwaida drew attention to. You may have noticed that Huwaida's background is in the pharma industry, and she's responsible for operational aspects of clinical trials. And Huwaida asked the question, or made the comment, that digital site feasibility would make a huge difference. And thanks, thanks, Cornelia. I see that you're actually trying to post and show us the ability to download site information. So my question to this group is, how would you like to see digital site feasibility done? Or does anybody want to comment on that whole topic of digital site feasibility? This is something that the team is considering as implementing in the future. So I throw it open. And here's a plaintive call. Don't leave me standing here alone. Say something, somebody.
So Colin, I'll probably be the first one to comment to your question. From a sponsor perspective, an industry sponsor perspective, it's common practice to use the Transalerate forms, which are pretty standardized in terms of the questions that are asked for site feasibility. And each pharma company only, veers off that form very slightly. So if perhaps from a sponsor side now, if the questions on the Transalerate form are adequately answered under the site profile on the platform, then that would, as I mentioned in my earlier comments, take away at least one step of the feasibility phase. And then, because usually there's a general feasibility in terms of site capabilities and interest and prior history in that therapeutic area. And then there's a second level of feasibility that's done after that first one, right? Now honing down to either it's a particular molecule or if the trial design requires something specific like a special diagnostic test, that's the second layer of the feasibility process. But at least if the first one that's done, which is high level and can be standardized, this would be very helpful from an industry sponsor side. It would take that out, and then we'd be able to at least navigate that process without taking additional time from the site, without needing to engage the site at that point and pulling, time and effort to answer yet another feasibility form that is going to typically ask the same questions for that first level of feasibility assessment.
Thanks very much, Huwaida. T, I noticed that you switched your video on. Did you want to, and you're nodding emphatically there. Do you want to add?
Well, I just wanted to encourage everybody to turn on their videos and speak and so that we can see one another, because I think it's a small enough group that it's nice to have a more intimate conversation. This work has been many years in development, and with leadership from Jennifer and Paxton and Colin. There's been a very thoughtful approach around, what are the most value added features of the platform. And it's just to many of the points that Huwaida, you've already made around, ease of access to, a set of early information that helps guide, what are the next steps that you can take as an organization. And it's been particularly amplified during COVID-19, how critical access to information is, and to be able to get to that quickly. Having to go through an entire feasibility process every time you want to do a new study, whether it's during a pandemic or otherwise, is just an incredible burden to a clinical trial team. So bringing that all together and making that accessible, there are huge incentives for industry to be able to leverage a resource like this. And it's incredibly valuable for sites to be able to just provide that information in one place, knowing that they just have to do it once, maybe once a year, but not certainly, 15 times if they're doing 15 clinical trials.
Thanks very much, T. And Cornelia, if you could show on the platform how to select observational study. So Craig has put his video on. Good to see you, Craig, and asked the question about observational studies. So Craig, I do believe that that's on the platform right now.
Yes.
As with everything, what we are really looking forward to hereafter is for people to start using this utility and updating it with further information. So for the moment, a lot of that information comes from clinicaltrials.gov and from PACTA, but I think clinicaltrials.gov might have a bias against recording observational studies, but I might be mistaken.
Well, I think just to elaborate, explain where the question is coming from, is what I'm wondering is there's difference between an observational study that's perhaps done at one institution or a few institutions. And, some of the sponsors are doing large multinational observational studies that are basically a clinical trial. So that the rigor of doing something like that is not any different than the rigor of doing a phase 3 study, just minus the drug. So is there a way to see that and know that, yes, this is a capable site who could run a phase 2 study, phase 3 study, but might not have necessarily done it before?
That's a great point, Craig. So Faith and Cornelia, since you're helping me to take notes, let's take that as a comment that the team can look at a little bit more. Is there anybody else that wants to say anything, any comments? Tom, welcome. I noticed Tom Kariuki, our overall boss at the African Academy of Sciences in the AISA platform, that's the sponsor of this particular project. Tom, do you want to say something?
No, I just want to say I'm delighted to be joining you. Thanks, Colin.
Thanks, Tom. So, folks, I've got the colleagues from the main room that they'll be pulling the plug on us and getting us out of here in about 3 minutes from now. Again, any other themes, any other questions that you would like to ask or to comment on? Nikesh, can I put you on the spot a little bit and tell us a little bit more around what you very briefly touched on in the main room around how the Africa CDC plans to use this going forward, this particular platform? Nikesh? So we got a bit of connection difficulties with Nikesh. And Nikesh, my apologies for being the professor that I am and putting you on the spot there.
Used or engaged in potential clinical trial. It was quite a really difficult task at that particular time. And we developed actually a site assessment questionnaire and also looked at different dimensions that could go into really having those sites disaggregated into what we call tier ready, that we're kind of ready to go in case we have any phase 2, phase 3 clinical trial. And then those that needed some kind of level of support. So to really move to that tier ready, and really sites that have been involved with experience, but not probably ready to do what we call now virological and immunological assays to be able to do a phase 3, being involved in a phase 3 trial. So I think that was a great experience working with the African Academy of Science, because that's really helped us quite a lot in getting that really that disaggregations and in terms of tier ready site. So yes, that experience has been there, and we're working together. I mean, we'll continue to work together to refine it. So ensuring that site will provide the best, the completeness, information that will be required probably to really have them uploaded and on the CT and the community trials community. Clinical trial communities platform. I think that's a very important, because at that particular stage, when you get involved or engage vaccine developers, there are issues around the attack rates, the incidents, all those actually are those that will actually make actually our selections of sites quite easy once we get to the level of really operationalizing clinical trials at the site level. Thanks so much,
Colin. Thank you so much. And the guys are going to pull the plug and pull us into the main room. But you brought up an important point, and that is about ranking sites on tier 1, tier 2. We should get an opportunity to talk about that again in the future. But it does open up the opportunity for capacity development. And I'll keep talking. At some point, I will just get cut off. But this is really a difficult topic around ranking sites. So what I really liked in terms of what you did there in the case at the Africa CDC is that you had very clear criteria in terms of the experience of these sites with biologic trials, the ability to have COVID-19 testing facilities nearby. So all of those are criteria that become difficult to argue with. So thanks for setting that up in place, and it might help us as we go forward in terms of identifying how to rank sites with the good objective later on that we attract sponsors to come in and help us build the overall ecosystem within the continent, the ecosystem of capacity and development of sites. So we are now closing and going back to the main room. Thank you very much